All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're tearing down a genuinely fascinating piece of software today called Chameleon CRM. We're going to trace its whole evolution together, from how it elegantly solves that massive user interface bloat we all hate, right down to how the devs hardened its enterprise backend security. It's honestly a captivating look at how a modern SaaS app matures from a simple concept into an absolute powerhouse.
Here's our roadmap for the teardown. We're kicking things off with the duct tape problem, moving into the adaptive business OS, breaking down the disruptive pricing math, looking at how they hardened the interface, and wrapping up with the enterprise-grade architecture.
So, Section 1, the duct tape problem, or dealing with scattered legacy tools.
Let's be real, running a growing business often feels way more like managing software than actually managing your customers, right? Think about the friction of cobbling together half a dozen bloated legacy tools. You've got QuickBooks for invoices, HubSpot for your CRM, Calendly for scheduling, MailChimp, Stripe, and let's face it, probably a bunch of spreadsheets desperately holding the whole shebang together. It is the classic duct tape operation. What Chameleon proposes instead is radical simplicity. One unified operating system, absolutely no integrations, no duct tape. Just one highly tuned engine that cleanly handles the entire pipeline from that very first social media lead capture all the way to the final paid invoice.
Moving to Section 2, an adaptive business OS, featuring AI-powered workflows.
Now here is where it gets really clever. You know how usually building a massive all-in-one tool means you end up with this confusing, cluttered dashboard that tries to be literally everything to everyone? Well, to fix that without forcing businesses to completely change how they work, they built an adaptive business OS. Instead of forcing your team to bend over backwards for rigid software, Chameleon uses an AI engine that dynamically changes its terminology, its core workflows, and even its marketing copy to perfectly match your specific industry. It totally removes the cognitive friction of learning a new tool, mainly because it already speaks your exact language.
It is super interesting seeing this adaptive logic in action. If you run a salon, the software instantly shifts its framework to tracking clients and appointments. But if you run an auto shop, that exact same database translates its interface to track vehicles and repair orders. For a medical practice, it seamlessly becomes patients and cases. The software literally changes its skin so a dispatcher or a technician feels right at home immediately. We're talking almost zero learning curve here.
All right, Section 3, the disruptive pricing math and how it breaks the SaaS model.
So the product is functional, it's highly adaptable, but let's talk money, because their financial strategy is what really disrupts the traditional legacy SaaS market. They have this Join Premium Empire tier that unlocks full operational capabilities, AI automation, staff calendars, the works. The fundamental buyer question is $79 a month too expensive? Well, to a solo freelancer just starting out in their living room, yeah, maybe. But to an established shop,
Just look at the alternative, that scattered legacy stack we talked about earlier. For a small shop of just 3 to 5 users, paying per-seat licenses for a CRM, a separate accounting tool, scheduling, digital signatures, you are easily looking at scaling up to $645 a month. No joke. Chameleon handles all of this with 0 per-seat caps. You can add unlimited employees and never pay more than that flat rate. Suddenly, $79 looks like an absolute steal. But here's the real kicker. The hidden financial anchor. Because Chameleon is an official Stripe partner, they drop their platform fee to just 0.8%. Most competitors charge a sneaky 2 to 2.5% cut on every single transaction. To put that into perspective, if your business processes $10,000 a month, you're saving up to $170 in processing fees alone. The software literally pays for itself just in merchant savings. It's brilliant.
Which brings us to Section 4. Hardening the interface with Enterprise Pro styling.
now killer features and disruptive pricing, that's only half the battle. To attract serious B2B buyers, the folks managing high-stakes payroll, taxes, and corporate clients, the platform's visual identity had to do some serious growing up. The early design of the app had these bubbly, rounded corners, bright saturated purples, and fat, playful lowercase fonts. And sure, it looked clean, but it accidentally gave off this mobile game or lightweight consumer app vibe. It just didn't scream serious business tool. So they did a massive styling audit to completely transition from that gamified look to a hardened Enterprise Pro interface.
The transformation is honestly phenomenal. And get this, they achieved it entirely through precise CSS fixes. No total rebuilds. They dropped the border radius on their dashboard cards down to a sharp, crisp 8 pixels. They swapped out the colorful 3D-styled icons for sleek, monochrome line icons in a muted slate blue. and they upgraded the typography to a semi-bold, geometric sans serif font in standard title case. These seem like subtle tweaks, but they instantly elevated the dashboard into a professional, high-end business machine that just inherently commands trust.
Finally, Section 5, Enterprise-Grade Architecture, where we look at securing the back end.
As we all know, a sleek front end means absolutely nothing if the underlying infrastructure is compromised. So let's look under the hood. During a code-based audit, they found a critical CWE 201 vulnerability, basically an information exposure flaw. When the system generated a public invoice, it was accidentally querying wildcard data from its Supabase database. This meant massive nested authentication objects, stuff like internal user UUIDs, Google provider tracking keys, exact login timestamps. All of this was bleeding into the public network payload. Yikes, right? If an end customer just popped open their browser's developer tools, they could scrape highly sensitive internal team metadata.
But this perfectly illustrates how you handle a crisis. They didn't just quietly slap a band-aid on it, they completely reframed this fix as an enterprise triumph by building a bulletproof double-layer failsafe. Step 1 happened at the database level. They yanked out all wildcard selects and enforced explicit SQL selection, meaning the database physically cannot pull forbidden data, period. Then, Step 2 at the API level, they introduced a strict data transfer object, or DTO, interceptor. This acts like a bouncer, sanitizing and filtering the data before it ever reaches the client. This 1-2 punch completely locked down the platform to guarantee SOC 2 Type 2 compliance.
To keep that newly secured core app lightning fast and lightweight, Chameleon offloads critical background tasks to serverless edge functions. A Stripe webhook handles billing events instantly behind the scenes. The release unpaid bookings function automatically drops uncommitted calendar holds. That specifically allows businesses to effortlessly enforce mandatory deposits, which is a real game changer because that feature alone drops no-show rates by an incredible 90%. And finally, the Gemini AI proxy ensures that any data sent out to external AI models is strictly scrubbed of personal identity context.
When you put it all together, it builds a massive case for the future. Looking at the conservative, base, and aggressive 12-month cumulative revenue scenarios, it's clear that combining a secure, adaptive, and beautifully designed system culminates in a highly optimistic trajectory for stakeholders. It just flat-out proves that merging a frictionless user experience with hardcore back-end security is an absolute winner.
Which leads us with an incredibly important question to ask ourselves about our own day-to-day workflows. Take a close look at the administrative overhead you deal with every single week. What scattered, duct-taped software are you still overpaying for right now that a smart, adaptive system could completely replace today?